Today, I would like to present a new favorite book, You Forgot Your Skirt, Amelia Bloomer by Shanna Corey, illustrated by Chelsea McLaren. The fun of this book is that it presents a mystery. Some might consider the book to be simply a picture book, while others might believe it to be a biographical nonfiction. The title gives us a big hint that the book is about Amelia Bloomer, who is a real person that lived in the 1800s. The suggested age range is pre-K to fifth grade. But the picture book does not give us an overview of Amelia's life. It simply describes her role in the women's movement. The book begins by explaining that Amelia Bloomer was not a proper lady. And I love this. It immediately grabs the reader's attention. We want to know why Amelia wasn't a proper lady, and was that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, the author goes on to explain that Amelia Bloomer thought that being a proper lady was kind of silly because to be a proper lady, there were a lot of things that you couldn't do. One of those things was that you couldn't vote. Another one of those things was that you couldn't work. Well, Amelia Bloomer loved to work. In fact, she wanted to be a writer. She wrote for her husband's paper, and eventually she created the first women's newspaper called The Lily, which she edited and wrote for. The last thing that the author describes as what Amelia thought was silly was the way that women dressed. First, the author explains how dresses in the time weighed almost as much as a dozen bricks, but that women were also considered walking broomsticks because their dresses swept along the ground, picking up mud and trash as they walked down the streets. Seems kind of silly, right? Well, Amelia had the same idea. And so the book goes on to explain the role that Amelia played in fashion reform for women and how that went along with rights for women as well. In order to call this book a biographical nonfiction, which is the mystery we're trying to solve, we need to look at 8 criteria. The first criterion for evaluating biographical nonfiction is whether or not to consider it good literature. My opinion, and it's relative, is that it is good literature. I do think that Corey could have done a better job of presenting a little bit more facts so that we get that three-dimensional characterization of Amelia Bloomer, but I really did enjoy it, and I felt like it's a book that could go on a shelf and kids could read 100 years from now and it would still be relevant. And that's why it's a great subject too, because it can get kids interested in women's rights. Accuracy, I checked the author's note at the end, which gives a better overview of things that actually happened, and the things in that author's note are accurate. I think that the author's note is super important for this book because it helps distinguish between fact and fiction. The text of the book is limited because I think that Corey was trying to make it easy for kids to be interested in, but the author's note helps clarify what really happened in a more mature way. There are no sources in this book. How hard would it be to add a bibliography? But she didn't do that. I think because most of the things in the book you could look up pretty easily online. It doesn't have any photos, but it does have some gorgeous illustrations, which I believe is what makes it appeal to readers. It's not a boring textbook format. It's got these beautiful pictures with these fun little faces that are painted by Chelsea McLaren. One of the things I thought was interesting is the difference in the proper ladies, which you can see here with the purple skirt, and Amelia Bloomer, who's the one with the red skirt. The proper ladies had more curves, which presents more softness, more comfort, more even fragility. And then you've got Amelia Bloomer, who's more linear, more straight up and down or straight across. And those things present more authority. And I thought it's interesting because we're talking about women's rights, that women weren't fragile, that they could have authority and be important. And I think that the illustrator does a fabulous job of of giving that view without saying it outright. And I think that that is the most important reason why this book is such a great book. And whether or not it falls into the biographical nonfiction, I think that's something that you have to solve and figure out for yourself when you go ahead and go out and get a copy of this book for yourself.